So, welcome everybody to our February webinar. This is the Usomi webinar, and I'd like to thank our sponsor Bracco for supporting us. Today we have the great pleasure to have our president of the society, Dr. Erik Ranschaert from Tilburg in the Netherlands. I think most of you already know him. He's quite active with regards to AI and everything, and is also working at the Elisabeth II Steden hospital in the Netherlands. And yeah, I'm quite happy to hear his thoughts on integration of AI in radiological workflow and the practical aspects. And please feel free to use the Q&A box in the chat box to ask questions, and then we'll have a discussion round at the end. So we'll collect the questions until then. And I'll share the mic with Erik now. Erik.
Yes, hello, Daniel. Thank you very much for the kind introduction, and welcome to this Usomi webinar. And I will try to give you some explanation about how you can implement artificial intelligence in radiological practice. And I partly also do this out of my personal experience. So let's go and start with the meeting, with the presentation, I mean. Actually, just as an introduction, radiologists are not that unfamiliar with artificial intelligence as you would think. This is actually a part of a presentation that was published in 1963 already. And it says that in this paper, they are describing a concept of converting visual images on röntgenograms into numerical sequences that can be manipulated and evaluated by the digital computer. So you see, this already started more than 50 years ago. But actually, a lot of things changed recently, and maybe the main thing changed in 2016 with the AlexNet. I'm not going into depth about that in this presentation, but this person, who is actually a very well-known computer scientist from Canada, he said that people should stop training radiologists now. He also got the Turing Award in 2018, which is almost like the Nobel Prize for science. But nevertheless, Geoffrey Hinton shook up the radiological community, and everybody started realizing, oh, this is maybe something that will threaten our profession, etc. How should we deal with this? And actually, this gave rise to a real hype concerning artificial intelligence. But we do see that there's a lot of new scientific research going on in the field of artificial intelligence. And it actually all started around that period, 2012. And then you can see there's a real exponential growth. And this is from a recent publication where you can see the countries that are most active in the area of artificial intelligence for radiology, for medical imaging. And the top 12 most productive countries are listed here. And you can see here that United States is leading, followed by China, by the way. And then there's a lot of different countries, like United Kingdom is not doing bad as well, is not doing too bad. And then the Netherlands is also mentioned here. But okay, I don't see Europe, but if you maybe would calculate Netherlands and UK and France and Italy together, then you would have a better impression of what's being done in Europe. But nevertheless, there is an explosive growth of AI research, not only in medicine, but also in engineering and biotechnology. And the radiology in particular lends itself to AI research because we do have large digital data sets and images, of course. So we can see that radiological community is participating in AI research. There is a growing number of publications, and we also see that there's an increasing attention to the topic in radiological meetings, such as the RSNA and the upcoming ECR, of course. Just to give you an idea how many startups have been popping up during the past few years, this is quite impressive. So, I mean, for radiologists, it's not easy to get a hold of, to see the trees through the wood, you know? So what should you select? Where should you start? What is available? It's quite difficult. So in the next few slides, I'm going to try to explain you how radiologists can use AI in their practice. First of all, you have to realize yourself that implementing AI will change the workflow. And at this moment, when you look at the most developments that are being made, then it's in the field of image analysis, automated image analysis, because it's all based on deep learning, and deep learning is really something that is, let's say, fit for image analysis. And but there are many other possible applications for AI, for other types of AI then. I will explain this further. And these applications can also improve patient care and safety. I will explain you why. Nevertheless, it's essential to start with, when you want to implement AI in your practice, it's really essential to start with defining the most relevant clinical use case for implementation of AI in your workflow of daily practice. So you have to look around and see what would be the most suitable for your own practice. What kind of application do you need? Trying to find an AI application is not like going to a shop or a toy shop where you pick some nice toy that looks attractive and they say, maybe we could try this. No, you first have to think about it, and you have to identify what could be useful for your own practice. This is really important. So I will give you a short overview of the parts of the workflow in which AI can play a role. And as you can see, it's not only in image analysis. So first of all, we could develop tools, and they will be available to verify if some examination is appropriate, if we should use the examination. And then we can also use it, for example, for patient scheduling. That's something that we are developing in Amsterdam in the Netherlands Cancer Institute to optimize the planning for MRI examinations. We can also use AI to select the right image protocol, because this can be largely automated if we want in the machines. For example, depending on the type of examination, the machine could select the most appropriate protocol by itself. The dose can be reduced as well. For example, it's already shown that low dose CT scans can be made, and the bad image quality that this results in can be optimized by post-processing the images by AI, so that you get really optimal quality of images by using low-dose CT scans. Or you can even convert MRI scans into CT images. We can also use, and this is actually the most familiar type of tool that you know, that's using AI for image processing, so which means for detection and quantification of pathology. And then, of course, we can also use AI, for example, to optimize the hanging protocols, and, for example, to optimize the workflow and the work list. I will show this in later slides. Of course, the image reporting can be facilitated by artificial intelligence tools. We can, for example, use natural language processing to produce different kinds of reports made for the general practitioner or for the referring physician, etc. And then there's the business intelligence type of solutions, and also the communication, the way to communicate. So there's a lot of possibilities, but these are the most, let's say, frequent or well-known interpretation and reporting. Okay, oh, I'm going back now. I should go forward, sorry for that. All right, so to give you an example, when we look at the clinical workflow, you know, first the images are acquired at the CT or MRI, then the images are being post-processed, and then we get the images. But then we need to analyze these images, and this is for oncology. So the most frequent image-based tasks are, first of all, the detection. And this can be done, for example, to detect pulmonary nodules or breast cancer or brain metastases. But we can also use AI for analyzing the findings, so that we can segment the lesion and measure the exact volume. We can also try to use AI to classify the findings. And we can also use it to stage the disease, to make an automated TNM classification. And then we can also use these tools to monitor the disease during treatment. And this is a big advantage. If we do this in an automated way, we can actually track the changes during the therapy, and which would provide us a lot of interesting information. And then we can also include all these reports, these findings in a report. And this is the most interesting part, I think. We can also analyze these or include these quantitative data into other findings, such as the DNA profile of the patient. And this is really the way to go to a more personalized type of medicine. But this is quite important. The clinical translation of AI. I want to say that, first of all, there's a big gap between what's being developed in research and then how you implement it in clinical practice. And there has been a study published recently, which is a meta-analysis. It was published last year in the Lancet Digital Health. And they evaluated the number of studies where the performance of AI was measured and published. And what I mean is not the performance in the laboratory with lab data, but in real clinical settings with local real world data. And the conclusion of the study was that the diagnostic accuracy of a tool, of an AI tool, should also be evaluated with real and local patients and their data. So the evidence on how AI algorithms will influence the diagnostics, they should come from randomized trials where the outcomes are compared with the alternative, let's say, classical diagnostic tests. And this kind of research is very rare until so far. So we have to be careful with this. So how do we implement AI? Well, it looks simple. And you got an idea, I want to implement this tool for, let's say, lung nodule detection, then let's do it. And we start working with it and it's done. It looks easy like that. But I have to disappoint you, I think. There's no one-fits-all solution for all AI tools. So every tool will have to be, let's say, worked out differently and implemented differently. So as I said, the first question you should ask yourself is, what type of AI solution do you need? In this picture, you can see a tool, or this actually the workstation as I have it in the University Medical Center of Utrecht. And it's actually an image of the imager interface, which is on the left monitor. And you can see that this is an AI tool used to analyze the white matter abnormalities in the brain. So they can, with this tool, they can activate a lot of different tools. Just to give you an idea of how you should think about what do I need and how do I work with it. I think that you have to make in advance before you start implementing something, or let's say, yes, before you want to try an AI tool, you should make a roadmap. And in this roadmap, you should, first of all, identify the decision makers in purchasing AI. So who will make the final decision? Who will, if we have to buy something or invest, who are the people that make decisions in doing this? It's not me alone, apparently, probably. It's not you alone. It's not maybe not only the radiologist, but there's a lot of other people involved. So you have to identify all stakeholders and also start talking with them. And then this is something I think you should certainly need to be able to motivate all stakeholders. You need a local champion. You need somebody who strongly believes in the project and who can spend time in implementing it. And then you also have to learn about the existing policies and regulations in your institution or in your hospital, because there's a lot of legislation involved, and you have to be sure that there will be no barriers on your road to the final implementation. And then you also have to think about the IT infrastructure that you have. Is it sufficient, or do you need something else? And it all depends on the targets. For example, do you only want to implement existing tools from vendors, commercial tools, let's say, or do you want to develop some AI tools yourself? And well, this has an impact on the way you build your infrastructure. And as you know, everything needs to be seamlessly integrated Otherwise, nobody will use it. And of course, this is not unimportant. You have to find out about the priorities of the ICT department, because you do need them. And as you know, their schedule is usually quite full, maybe already for the year or maybe for 2 years in some institutions. So you have to talk with them and find a plan to implement this, because you absolutely, you will need them. So provide plenty of time. So what other elements can you include in your roadmap? Well, maybe it's not a bad idea to start with a stakeholder advisory committee. So, or let's say a governance structure in which all the stakeholders are involved, and in which you can also, let's say, find ways to communicate everything related to the implementation of your AI tool. And you have to be able to provide feedback to each other. So you do need regular communication with all the participants. You have to know what the legal officer thinks about it. You have to know if the privacy issues are solved. You have to talk with those who are investing or buying the equipment, and et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot of people to talk with, and you do need some structure to do this. And then you also need to identify your key performance indicators. What do you want the AI tool to perform? What do you expect from it? What should it do? When would you be satisfied of, for example, the pilot that you start with an AI tool? What do you want to accomplish? And when you start to implement it, you also, well, this is something that you could do, is to think about a multi-stage review process of the tool, which means the following. The first stage would be, let's say, a retrospective analysis of the tool. So you select a few data, existing data, and then you send them to the provider. And this is a retrospective type of review process. So you ask the provider to make an analysis of a certain number of a data set. And then you can look at it, how it, what kind of results it's giving. And then you can talk with the provider maybe to, let's say, improve or optimize the application depending on your data. And then the second phase should be a prospective evaluation. So then you do something with new data, but you do it in a limited group and you keep it outside of the workflow, of the general workflow. And then after this phase, when everything's fine, then you can start evaluating it in the real clinical environment. So you have to do it in stages. And after each stage, you have to, let's say, make adaptations if necessary or improve something. And it all depends on also on the feedback that you get from the participants, which is very important. And then, of course, you also have to think about the budget. Where is the money coming from to do this? What budget do we have? And then you also, of course, you have to calculate some kind of return on investment, but this is quite difficult. So, I mean, it's difficult to think about the kind of profit that it will generate, but I think you should rather think about what kind of effect does it have on the turnaround time, or how does it influence the efficiency, the accuracy, the patient safety? How does it influence the strategic positioning of our department, of our hospital? And maybe we can do it. We can also measure the degree of satisfaction among the referring physicians and maybe among the patients. Maybe if patients will find this interesting, if you are able to provide this, and if you inform them about it. Maybe you could also increase your capacity and facilitate the workflow so that you can reduce your backlog of examinations. Or maybe you can just contribute in the work-life balance. So there's many factors that you have to think about. And the more you have, the better it will be to convince the stakeholders to make this investment. This is some kind of a scheme with a practical approach. And I have this from a thesis from Leah Stroom from the Utrecht University. She made a master thesis about this. And well, she has summarized the whole process in 4 steps. She says, first of all, there's the question why. So, which I already said, you have to think about the right use case and the target for your AI application. And then you have to identify who, the stakeholders. And then you think about how. So how are we going to implement this, and how are we going to evaluate it? And then what is the technology behind it? How do we have to install it? So these are the 4 essential parts of implementing AI in your practice. So first of all, why? What's the goal of your AI project? And it could be to improve workflow. It could be to improve the quality of your examinations, or maybe to facilitate the training of your residents. So I repeat it, you have to find the most useful case for your practice, but you could also think about maybe implementing AI for developing algorithms yourself. So that's research and development. It depends on the location where you're working, and some hospitals, I'm sure, that will be interested in developing algorithms themselves, depending on the use cases. If they have a use case where they would like to use AI and the tool is not commercially available, then they will have to develop it themselves. So this is also possible. Then who? So I give you an example of our hospital. So first of all, we have the radiology, which means radiologists, residents, technicians, radiographers, I mean. And then, of course, we have the PACS management, or the ICT department. We have the clinical physicists who are concerned about the management of the equipment and the software. Then we have the referring physicians. In our case, we also have a partnership with the University of Tilburg. We have the board of directors, of course, that we have to inform and convince about the use of this. We have the data privacy officer who takes care of the legal issues. And then we have the purchasing department. So there's a lot of stakeholders here. So what type of solution? Well, you can think about a commercial solution coming from a vendor or from several vendors. The advantage of doing this is that it's not really time consuming. I mean, you don't have to develop an AI tool, and you don't have to take care about the maintenance, because this is being provided by the vendor itself. And the regulatory clearance is also taken care of already. It should be CE marked in Europe, in the United States, FDA approved. And the disadvantage is that products coming from vendors are usually not trained on local data, and they might not be optimally customized to what you need. And of course, the question is, what do you do with updates? If there's something new, do we have to buy a completely new product, or is it included in the service contract, etc.? As I said, you can also develop AI algorithms yourself. And the advantage of this is that you can really make a solution that is customized to your needs. But then you also have to, well, actually, because you're not selling it commercially, there's less regulatory overhead to do. But you do need time to develop. You do need a good infrastructure, hardware and software, or maybe an ideal platform, including everything in the cloud. And you also have to take care of maintenance. Who is going to do this? And then there's something I wanted to mention. You can also think about a partnership with the academy. In a lot of academic institutions, there's already research going on, and maybe some institutions have startups working with them. But in this kind of partnership, you can co-develop. You can have support from the academy. You can share your expertise. You can maybe even share data, which is called transfer learning. Well, certainly when you share algorithms, then it's really transfer learning. And you can also collaborate in educating your staff or maybe your residents. You don't have to do it separately. You can also combine them, of course. And this is actually what we want to do in Tilburg as well. So how? This is the technical infrastructure. When you see the graphic on the right side, oh, I'm going back now. Well, first of all, you need a platform where you can seamlessly integrate the tool with your existing system, with your PACS. And this, of course, is the images can be sent from the PACS to the AI server, which might be in the cloud, and then this AI provider will send you back the results. Of course, you can also use this kind of system when you want to develop algorithms yourself. Then you need a system that automatically anonymizes the images, so that you can use them for developing the algorithm. So that's called data curation. The imager, well, I wanted to show you what they developed in Utrecht, which is quite exceptional. That's called the imager. And this took about 3 years to develop, and they invested a lot of money in this. If you read on Mini Europe, you can read that it costed about 800,000 euro. But nevertheless, they made it themselves. And well, this is a very user-friendly type of platform from which they can not only choose the algorithm they want for each type of examination, but they can also use the data they have and send them from the PACS to the AI server or to a server that is used to develop the train the algorithms. So this is kind of the ideal solution. And the way this will be implemented on a larger scale is not very clear yet. Either there will be commercial solutions, either hospitals will have to develop this themselves. So Imager is a vendor-neutral AI platform. It's not VNA, but it's VNIA. No, AI, sorry. And this is fully integrated with the RIS, the PACS, and the HIS, or the EPD system, as I say in the Netherlands, or the EPR. So all AI applications are integrated in the same platform. And as you know, that there's many AI solutions available. So you have to you can make a choice of different vendors and hook them to the same platform, or you can even develop or use your own developed algorithms. And it's all seamlessly integrated. And then, well, you can also, for example, go for a commercial solution, but usually companies are not really vendor neutral. You have these marketplaces already, and you can choose for a marketplace that also offer you different type of solutions, AI tools, but then this is not vendor neutral, and you have the risk of being in a locked-in situation where you only can deal with this commercial provider. Actually, a platform, when you have the infrastructure available, such as in Utrecht, then you have a faster way of deploying your AI solutions because it's independent of the vendor. They just have to hook up to the existing VNAI, even if it's temporarily. And you can also faster integrate new versions. So how do you integrate a tool now if you have the technical part solved? How do you integrate it in your workflow? And most use cases will be related to analyzing images and adding relevant findings to your report. So you have to ask yourself, when do I want the AI tool to become active? Because possibly this tool could bypass you as a radiologist, depends on in what stage it's activated or produces its report. And I will show you a different types of scenarios. But for example, with chest x-rays during in an emergency service, the reports could be made, or the analysis could be made before you even see the report. And then you can, maybe the radiographers could show you the findings or come to you if they saw something suspicious, etc. Or maybe the results can be sent immediately to the emergency department. For stroke, the same. The report can be sent directly, could be sent directly to the neurologist or the interventional radiologist via mobile, and I will show you this. So there's different scenarios possible. The first I wanted to show is the AI on demand. Then you have the scenario where you have the automated analysis in background. And then there's the third one where you have some kind of a discrepancy management. So the first scenario, AI on demand, it means that radiologists, they activate or they trigger the AI tool at the moment they want. So the modality sends the images to the PACS, and then the radiologist, when looking at the images in the PACS, can click and send the images to the AI server, which can be in the cloud, and then the results can be sent back to the PACS or to the RIS and the electronic patient records. The big advantage is that radiologists are in full control of asking for AI interpretations. The disadvantage is that this uses or needs a manual step And this could be more time consuming because it could delay the workflow, because the results, well, you could have to wait for them for a few minutes. So this would really delay your reporting. Second scenario, and I think this will be standard the most preferred one, is the automated image analysis, where it all goes in background. So images are sent automatically directly from the scanner, not to the PACS, but also to the cloud, or maybe to both. And before reading, so it happens in background. So the modality sends the images to the server, to the AI server. From there, the results are sent to the PACS, and then the radiologist can look at them when he opens the examination, and the final report is, after validation by a radiologist, sent to the RIS or the electronic patient record. So this would help us prioritizing the reading order, because it can reduce turnaround time. I will show you in a few examples afterwards. And the radiologist can view the AI findings, is not obliged to, but he or she can decide if he or she wants to see the results. So the radiologist will also be able to ensure the accuracy of the report and to revise the AI report before it's validated or sent to the EHR. And then there's a third scenario where everything happens in background. So it's same as the previous one, but the results are automatically routed to the RIS or the electronic patient record before the radiologist sees them. So this really requires a discrepancy management. Why? Because, well, the report that is sent by the AI server to the electronic patient record could be considered as some kind of a preliminary report. And then as soon as it arrives in the RIS or electronic patient record, the radiologist should look at it and make a final report, if this is still possible, by the way. If you start doing this and automatically allowing the AI server to send reports to the EHR, then you will need a very accurate one with a high sensitivity and specificity. Of course, this will create the fastest turnaround time, although there's a potential risk of making errors. And so this is why I call it discrepancy management. But it might also increase the calls to the radiology regarding the interpretation, and it might possibly delay the workflow. And it might also have medical legal consequences. I will give you a few examples of what I spoke about. So first of all, let's think about a stroke viewing software for cerebral infarctions. This already exists, and these tools are available, let's say, to, first of all, discriminate between a hemorrhage or an infarction, and then depending on the findings, a CTA can be provided and the thrombus can be detected automatically. Usually it's thrombi above the circle of Willis. And of course, this is able to run 24/7, and it will allow radiologists to save, or clinicians actually, to save a lot of time for diagnosis and treatment. So decisions can be made fast this way, because this process only takes a few minutes. And as you know, time is brain. So this type of analysis also results in automated messaging. So the neurointerventional radiologist will be informed automatically. I will show you this in a scheme. So usually how it works is that in the hospital, images are being made. They are sent to a DICOM service provider, usually in the cloud. This is done securely, of course. So the DICOM database, this is where the images are being sent. And then the tool is being used, is deployed, the AI imaging analysis service. This takes about 3 to 6 minutes, depends on if it's only detection of an infarction or bleeding, or if a CTA is being provided and needs to be analyzed, for example, to see the collaterals or the perfusion. And then from this result, depending on the results or independent of the results, the information is being sent by a cloud messaging service. And so the let's say the on-call radiologist or the interventional radiologist or other specialist will be informed automatically. So this really saves a lot of time. Another example of how to implement AI in workflow is the work list prioritization. I give you two examples. The first is the CTA for pulmonary embolisms and the intracranial bleeding. So just to give you a general scheme of how this type of tools is functioning. So you have a modality, and the images created by this modality are being sent to a DICOM router. And this router selects the types of examinations that need to be sent to the AI server, to the model, let's say, to the algorithm. And this is, for example, only CT chest, let's say. And then the AI model sends its results automatically to the PACS. So this process is being done automatically. And then the radiologist, when we talk about, for example, a software to detect pulmonary embolisms, the radiologist will see a sign on the workstation that there's some pathological examinations in the work list. So these could be prioritized. This system permits triaging of studies based upon results from the AI model inference. This is, by the way, an excellent publication which was recently published in the Journal of Medical Imaging. So in Amsterdam, we already implemented, well, it's being implemented now, an algorithm for pulmonary embolisms, because there's a lot of patients coming for follow-up of cancer, and these are usually CT of chest and abdomen. And there's a lot of them, but there is also a backlog, so which means that the reports are being made with a certain delay. And this also means that these pulmonary embolisms, they can be missed, and they are quite frequent, especially with cancer patients. So the intention of implementing this type of software is to timely detect the pulmonary embolism in routine cancer patient scans. So to prioritize the examinations that are most urgent. And this is a clear use case. And this is how it works. So the images are being sent from the PACS to some kind of an orchestrator. And this orchestrator is a tool that automatically de-identifies the data, and the data are being sent over the firewall to a cloud-based analysis server. And this server is sending the reports back to the system. So this is usually how it works with many applications. So you have to cross a firewall. This is an example of the scans. This is just the scans that were made in Amsterdam, by the way. So you can see this is a venous scan. It's not a CTA, it's venous. But nevertheless, this is kind of a sign that you get when the software detects the pulmonary embolism. And then this is something in the next step. You should also talk with the PACS or RIS vendor to, let's say, create some kind of a pop-up sign or a color or a signal that this examination is pathologic, or there's a pathologic finding, and that you have to read it first. Another example is a tool to detect intracranial bleeding, which is actually quite frequently use case. And this type of algorithm for bleedings, it analyzes the examination and generates a binary output. It's negative or positive. So if the results are positive, then the priority of the examination is increased. So maybe the position of the examination is moved upward into the list, or maybe there will be a sign popping up. And of course, if it's negative, there will be no action. So the work list that's being done, that's being updated all the time. So it means that all the analysis needs to be done in background. And it has been shown that this type of solution can shorten the turnaround time with about 96%. Another example of an AI application is the automated reporting. This is already possible, by the way, and this is also something we are trying out in Amsterdam. This is a Dutch report with an image, and you can see that the report is being made automatically. So the findings are summarized and a conclusion is made. And so you can see the conclusion. There's a consolidation in the left middle field, and there's a mass in the upper lobe on the right side. there's a pneumothorax on the left side, and there's some pleural fluid on both sides. This can be made in all kinds of languages, but in practice, it seems to be very difficult to create reports that are accepted by all radiologists, because, you know, most radiologists do not use structured reporting, and they kind of like the prosa, and they use different wordings, etc. So this is rather difficult. So I know that this company is now has made a shift of mind, and they will now provide reporting of normal chest X-rays. So only the normal ones are provided with an automated report. So this is also some kind of interesting development, I think. We have another possible solutions as detection of anomalies. And so, for example, for pulmonary nodules, this is quite interesting. A lot of hospitals are doing these follow-up scans for cancer patients, and in Amsterdam as well, we do have a lot of them. So this causes quite a burden in the workflow, and we are looking for ways to facilitate this, to make the workflow a lot easier and to facilitate the work of the radiologist. So this is the kind of images that you get when using this software. It detects the lesions itself, and by the way, these are images coming from Amsterdam. So we tested it on our own data, and we actually sent them quite difficult cases, even some lesions that were missed by experienced chest X-ray or chest CT radiologists. So this is the kind of markings you see on the images, and this is the kind of lesions that can be detected. And this is a main advantage. The lesions are measured automatically and in 3D. So you get a more accurate measurement of the lesion, which also allows you to follow up the lesion, especially with cancer patients, in a more accurate way. Now, you also have to know what imaging biomarkers are, because this is also something you will be confronted with, and this is not the same as image analysis, or not completely the same as we saw so far. So this is really the quantitative step that we will make in radiology, and this is biomarkers are really the next step in the evolution to precision medicine, and I will show you why. So here we have the radiological workflow. The blue line is the conventional one, where we acquire the images, go to the radiologist, and he makes a report, and that's it. So, but we can also integrate biomarkers and radiomics, and then we have to do this in a seamless way, of course. So as soon as the images are required, the data are being sent to a server where AI tools and imaging biomarkers are available, and then a quantitative analysis is made. And these findings are shown to the radiologist, and then the radiologist can integrate these findings into the final radiological report. So this means that the radiologist is not only providing qualitative information, but also quantitative information, and this is a big step forward. So this is an example of some biomarkers that can be of some kind of analysis that can be made in your images. For example, you can do it for liver. You can automatically measure fat and iron concentration. You can do volumetrics in lungs with emphysema. You can use biomarkers to analyze or to evaluate the prostate, and to, let's say, quantitate the findings by the ADC. So to quantify to estimate the degree of malignancy of a specific lesion. Or you can also, for example, analyze the brain automatically. You can do the volumetrics to determine if a patient has dementia or not. So this is how it actually looks like, and then you compare with the benchmarks. This is for prostate imaging as well, where the ADC is quantified. Of course, you can also use in-house development, and then we're working on this in our hospital too. And we are now working in a scientific project together with the University of Tilburg. And the images are not from our study, of course, but I just wanted to show you something so that you can actually get an idea what it's all about. But we do make a lot of total body CT scans from multiple myeloma. So we are now developing an algorithm to detect these lesions automatically. And you know that there's a lot of images to look at in such total body CT scans, and the lesions can be as small as 5 millimeters. So any tool to facilitate this work would kind of be very helpful. So my key recommendations are, first of all, you need a local champion. And then secondly, you have to find a relevant use case. Then you have to make a roadmap, and please do include all relevant stakeholders in the planning, the testing, and the implementation phase. You need to define some methods and metrics to evaluate the AI application. So what does it need to do? The technology must perform at least as well as the existing traditional solution, but the tool must also deliver measurable improvements in diagnostics, in the workflow, and in costs. So AI is really not a way to reach something. It is a way to reach something. It's not a goal by itself. But the way you can use it, both when you are using with vendor-based solutions or with your own algorithms, is that you have data, you can make a prediction, and then with this prediction, you can undertake action, and then this should create the value. And then you can learn from this and maybe use the data to improve the model. So this is actually the end of my presentation. And in case you want to see it again, you can find all the webinars on our society website. There's an archive with all the webinars. So you can always go there and look at it again. So I think we are ready for questions now.
Okay, Erik, thank you very much. That was a very interesting and quite modern presentation also in terms of nice graphics and everything. I really liked it. So everybody, please feel free to post your questions. And there is already one question that I found really interesting from Nicolas Papanikolaou. So his question is, what we use in medical imaging, is that really artificial intelligence in terms of it being intelligent? So since it needs tons of data to perform a very narrow task and lacks generalizability in most cases, wouldn't it be time to try to change the term, although it might be, of course, sexy? So, but is it really intelligent, I mean?
Yes, actually I have a slide to explain this, but there's different, yes, AI is, the terminology is kind of confusing, but there's different levels of intelligence. And this is kind of, let's say, the way we think about it is a level in which the intelligence is certainly not at the human level yet.
Right.
It's just a way to augment our own intelligence. It's an assistant to our own intelligence. And as Nicolas said, these are very narrow-based tasks, and this is something which is usually not well understood by press because, well, or maybe outsiders not knowing what radiologists are doing. They think they don't know how difficult our jobs are and what kind of things we have to include to make decisions and to make reports. So I do agree that at this moment, most tools which are available are very narrow-based tasks, and this will probably still stay for a while like this. I think at least 5 to 10 years. So maybe we should think about a different terminology. I agree, but I don't have the right word now.
Right. I mean,
that.
actually, the question is that there seemed to be computer assisted detection, like the traditional CAD algorithms, and now that word is not used anymore, and everybody talks about AI, but it's basically just the same because it's just computer-aided detection.
It's true, but the CAD does have a bad reputation.
Yeah, it does. So there are a couple of other questions. So, for example, Elmar asked, do you think it's necessary to locally validate AI algorithms once you want to use them? So should every institution really check the results again?
Well, I think it certainly it could be done in a regional or let's say maybe a national kind of level. There's not a lot of experience available at this moment. So the question is how. This is what I also mentioned in the study that was published in the Lancet. There's still some research to be done. So how will these algorithms perform in comparison with the test data on the lab data? How will these perform in the real world? And the best way to evaluate this would be to create, for example, a national platform or something similar, or maybe a European platform where users can provide their feedback, or maybe some kind of scoring system could be analyzed. But I do agree that there is a need for some standardized measurement so that we can actually monitor the application, because nobody knows when do you know it will be work perfectly, or when you can be satisfied. First of all, when radiologists say it has to be at least as well as we are doing, how many radiologists know how well they are doing themselves? So if you don't have a benchmark before start implementing the tool, how good will it be after you start implementing it? How will you know?
Right. That's
this
right.
is kind
That's
of
right.
difficult. So there's a lot of questions to be answered. And my idea is that we have to make some, this is also the task of maybe national societies or the European society, to think about ways to evaluate it, to make standards.
That's right.
And maybe this can be done in an international level.
That's right. So actually, there are a couple of questions coming in, so we might try to answer them all still. Maybe one question is basically related to the one I asked before. So how do we solve the problem that like different devices have, for example, different resolutions and reconstruction kernels and everything? What's your opinion there?
Sorry, can you reformulate the question?
Yeah, basically, like following up on that question, that if everyone should validate the algorithms locally. So what do you think? How do we solve the problem of like different resolutions from different machines, different reconstructions kernels? Should we standardize imaging, or should we have algorithms that perform on every image, or what's your take on that?
Yes, it's a good question, Daniel, and I don't know the full answer to that. There will have to be a way to provide feedback to the providers, to the vendors. But actually, as you know, at this moment, as it works with the FDA and the CE marking, it's not possible to immediately change the algorithm and provide you with an updated one, because for all updates, a new approval needs, a new certification needs to be done. So maybe that system should be adapted as well, so that vendors are able to modify or improve the algorithm as based upon the local data. And this is also one of the advantages of doing it yourself. So maybe we should think about, rather, instead of buying an algorithm, buying a tool that enables us to use our own data and create the algorithm we want ourselves in a very automated and simple way, without knowing any software or any Python or any tool to develop it, without being a computer scientist. And these tools are being made now already. So that might be the most elegant solution. So then you should have to install a platform where you can upload your images and automatically define a use case and develop an algorithm. Another thing would be, for example, to create, and this is already being done in the United States by the American College of Radiology, they are creating an ecosystem where hospitals that want to make an algorithm depending on their own data, or made with their own data, where the radiologist can submit a use case for approval, and then this experts in the ecosystem, they can tell them, okay, you have to do it this way, or you have to provide this kind of data or that many data to develop it. So there's still kind of we still have to find the best solution to solve this kind of problems, and it's not easy.
I mean, and there are some more questions like regarding these topics. So, for example, Suraj asks, like, is there an accepted way to do prospective studies to ascertain the strength of an algorithm? I mean, the vendors can tell you whatever they want, and so how do you plan a study to confirm that prospectively, maybe? And following up on that also, like, how do you really evaluate the model that may detect lesions, and then how you decide which one to buy? Would you like say every algorithm that needs a prospective study, and if so, how do we do that? And should that guide your decision, or what's your take on that?
First of all, you have to, if you want, before you start implementing it in phase 3, in the previous phase, you know, when you do it prospectively, you should define a data set. For example, you could, when you start with a tool for detecting pulmonary nodules, you could ask the chest X-ray or the chest CT, or let's say the thoracic radiologist, to collect a few cases with easy cases and difficult ones, let's say 100 cases or 50 cases, and then you know the results, and then that's a retrospective phase. Then you can see how it is performing, and then you can already say, okay, this is something we're interested in, we'd like to go further. And then you start doing it in a limited group with only these experts in a prospective way. And then you have to, you will know how the software is performing comparing with the expertise of your own group. So this I think would be the best way to go. But then, of course, if you want to evaluate it as a whole, you need to define your key performance indicators. So what do you want from the algorithm? Do you want to, let's say, make your workflow easier? Do you want to gain time? Do you want to produce more cases a day? Do you want to be the oncologist happier? So this is something you have to think about on beforehand.
Yeah, exactly. Because I mean, the first thought that I had when I read that, like the question about a prospective study, you always think about patient outcome. And I think that would be very important too, but maybe very difficult as well. But like maybe for, like, as you said, it's probably important to define your key performance indicators in terms of what do you want to improve with the algorithm. If it's patient outcome, then that makes a whole other study than if you would just want to say, okay, I want to make X more cases per day. But then this leads to the question, like, are these algorithms like economically viable for your institution? And a very interesting question from Benoit as well. So what about the environmental cost of all these AI solutions? Because like a couple of days ago, I read a study that like how many cars, or well, the CO2 equivalent of a car per year it takes to train a Google algorithm that I don't know what it did, but like, what do you think about in terms of economical viability and also like these issues like environmental cost and everything?
Yes, that's a very difficult question. First of all, the ideal thing would be that hospitals can buy the same tools, all of them, so that people are not being discriminated, because there could be a situation where patients are being treated more accurately in hospitals where they do have these tools and where they have the money available to buy these tools. So this is also a difficult question, and the financing of these solutions should be thought about, and development, and it should be thought about how these tools are made available. And then the impact on the environment. This is a question I cannot answer, but I agree. I also read these publications where they say all the computer power that you need to calculate these findings will be significant, and will be negative for the environment. But yes, this is also for me an open question.
Yeah, okay, so maybe another question, because we have tons of questions coming in and I'm thinking maybe like time is also running out. If we shouldn't, maybe because there are so many very interesting questions, we could probably take some of those questions and post answers, or your answers, on our website or something.
Sure.
But maybe because there was a question from Kaveh about, so you talked about cloud-based analysis. So why do you think should it be cloud-based? Or and following up to that, maybe also, what about patient safety and like security threats, not only in terms of maybe data that is related to the cloud thing, but also to potential negative impact on the patient?
Now, first of all, you do have vendors that only work in cloud, and the reason is that the power they have available is much stronger when you do it in a cloud-based solution. It's also much easier for them to make upgrades and to, let's say, to maintenance the availability of the tool. Because when you do it with a local solution, as soon as there is a defect or software bug, the program will stop running. And when you choose for a cloud-based solution, this can be done much easier. This is actually, some vendors are only offering cloud-based solutions. So it will not be able to, you will not be able to install a local server for every vendor that you want to work with.
But
this
will
is
you
just, pardon?
sorry, just to interrupt you there, but will you need to revalidate their results with every update then? How do you make sure that once you validated what their claims, like say they have 90% accuracy and you validated that on your data, then they do an update and maybe you don't even notice and everything?
No, this is not possible. So when you have a license with a vendor, they are not able to automatically update the software without informing you. And and do not forget, before they update, they also need an approval from the official certification authorities. So this is not done automatically. But I just wanted to say that regarding the maintenance of your hardware and software, the cloud offers a lot of solutions, and which are much more economic than having to invest in local hardware and software. So there's a lot of reasons to go for a cloud-based solution. And what I also wanted to say is regarding the safety. Well, people do have this idea that using the cloud is not safe, but I can guarantee you that it's very safe. And it also depends on the agreement you have with your, you have to do this in a very safe contract, and you have to assure that every risk and every legislation is being included in the contract that you have with the provider. But for example, the sharing image data with a DVD, which is still happening in many hospitals, is much unsafer than a cloud solution, because these DVDs can get lost and etc. You know what can go wrong. And the same thing with if you use let's say local solutions, well, the hospitals are not very safe themselves. I mean, we always are very afraid when thinking about the cloud, but you know how many hospitals are being hacked, and there have been some demonstrations now recently in the Netherlands as well. So hospitals might think they are more secure than whatever environment, but this is not true. So, I mean, this is some kind of mind shift that we have to make, and this takes some time. I do agree, and we have to inform, people need to be informed about how safe or how secure these solutions can be.
And in terms of impact on the patient, let's say the AI gives a wrong answer in a preliminary report, maybe even, or in a fully automated report. So
yeah, that's a question about the bias, of course. That's just something that you have to evaluate yourself and to monitor. And this is also what vendors need, feedback from the users. How accurate is this? It could be that there's too many false positive findings, for example, when you use a software to detect hemorrhage in the brain. I know that some software is providing too many false positives. So this might result in software you don't use. But I mean, the vendors themselves, they have to, they have all, it's in their interest to provide tools that are quite accurate. Otherwise, the same will happen as with the CAD systems previously. Nobody will use them anymore.
Right. And maybe just in for the sake of time, one last question, and I'm sorry for all those questions I didn't address and maybe didn't really reflect accurately, but like a last thought, because it's something that really pops up every time we discuss these issues. So how about the whole black box thing? What do you think about explainability in terms of integration in the radiological workflow?
Yes, at this moment, I think there's still no problem with the black box because the systems are usually very explainable. The algorithms that are being used are very explainable. And I mean, the black box is only, let's say, applicable in cases where you are using deep learning techniques in which the data are not manually annotated. So this is the case when you develop a model or an algorithm where the algorithm itself is detecting the patterns in the image. but most algorithms that are being provided nowadays are manually annotated, based upon manually annotated data. So this is the ground truth. And this is done by radiologists or by experts, this annotation. So this means that the quality of your algorithm depends on the quality of your data that you provide. The better the data are being annotated, the better the algorithm will be trained, and also the better it will work. And this is not a black box. But yes, for other solutions, and in radiology, it is rarely the case, deep learning algorithms are used that find the structures and abnormalities themselves. At this moment, it's still uncommon, but in the future, this might become more common. And then, of course, yes, we should have some kind of transparency. But to ask you another question, or maybe one should think about the fact, how many of us who are using MRI still perfectly know what kind of sequence we are using and what kind of technology is behind it? Okay, you can ask for an explanation from the provider, that's true, but how many of us understand what the machine is doing?
Right. That's true. So I think in the interest of time, we have to close the webinar, really. I'm really sorry, because it was a very lively discussion, and I think we will certainly need to follow up on some of the questions maybe, and I'm sure these topics will be discussed at our next annual meeting, of course, and during ECR, and maybe we'll meet one another there again. And again, thanks to Bracco for sponsoring and making this possible. And thank you, Erik, for this really interesting webinar. Thanks all the listeners and you people out there for the discussion. And I hope to see you on the next webinar. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much, Daniel.
Thanks. Bye.